I'm not really up to date with the whole body positivity movement, so I can't really say that I'm staying in my own lane. If you don't already know me, I'm Muggen Mylle, and I was officially diagnosed with anorexia nervosa around the age of 10. I'm 20 now, pushing 9 plus 10, 21, so that's quite a long time ago. I was only a wee lad when I first developed an eating disorder. I, if anyone, know that eating disorders, especially anorexia nervosa, can be so much more complex than what we as a society are taught to believe it is. I've made a video before talking about how my trans identity and gender dysphoria played into my eating disorder. I'm well into my recovery, and recognizing my gender dysphoria and pursuing transitioning happened years after I was deemed quote-unquote recovered. I'm stating that because, as sad as it is, many people will try and twist my previous diagnosis of anorexia to invalidate my gender identity when it's the complete opposite. Eating disorders are often developed to cope, at least in my experience, so it shouldn't be too hard to grasp that hitting puberty and developing in a way that you don't want to is something that you need to cope with. That being said, today I'm gonna talk about the Tess Holliday situation. As you could probably tell, I'm gonna talk about body image, weight, eating habits. So if you're sensitive to any of that, do yourself a favor and click off now. For those of you who choose to stay, you're probably somewhat aware of Tess Holliday. She's a plus-size model and fat activist, and to be honest, I've only heard of her in the context of controversy. I'm not here to comment on that. I don't know if she's as bad as I've heard. Personally, I'm a teeny weeny bit skeptical, since a lot of people seem to look for flaws in anything a fat person says or does, so I wouldn't be surprised if everything is blown out of proportion. Not saying that she's perfect either. We're all human at the end of the day and we all make mistakes. I don't know if she's one of those who promote health at every size. If she does, then that's something I don't agree with. I'm no professional, and though I'm sure you can be healthy even when you're very overweight, I still think it's unhealthy in the way that it's only a question of time before you encounter health complications. However, I don't think your health determines your worth. You deserve respect at any size, even though it's often in everyone's best interest that we're as healthy as we can be, especially your own. There's still a time, a place, and a certain person who should have that conversation with you. Saying you're fat, you should lose some weight, it's unhealthy, isn't as helpful as you'd like to think it is. It might work for some people, but in most cases you don't accomplish anything. You're just making everyone feel like shit, honestly. Something I'd like to add that I found out while googling health at every size was that it can be traced back to the works of Linda Bacon. I just thought that was funny. Anyways, what I do know that Tess Holliday promotes is F Your Beauty Standards, which is a huge part of her brand. Throughout her entire career, she's been very vocal about how she's beautiful, even though it doesn't completely fit society's beauty standards. I mean, I think we all can agree that Tess is a very gorgeous woman, otherwise she wouldn't really be a model. The only unconventional thing about her is her size. All these years, she has been talking very positively about her fat and openly embraced it, and I think that's lovely. I'm all for that. I hope we all can agree that we all should be allowed to be happy in our bodies any point in life. Still, I know embracing your own body when you don't fit society's mold can be a bit controversial, but her history of loving her body has gotten her quite in the jam recently after she opened up about her eating disorder in tweets. To everyone that keeps saying, "You're looking healthy lately," or "You are losing weight, keep it up," don't comment on my weight or perceived health. Keep it to yourself. Thanks. Healing from my eating disorder, and everyone is out here thinking it's okay to comment on my weight loss. Already I'm a bit split. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who constantly try and push her down and make her feel bad about herself. But I genuinely like to think that those comments she listed came from a good place. Most people aren't educated when it comes to health, weight loss, and think that any weight lost is good, which is simply not the case. That's why her reaction might come off as rather rude to a lot of people. But as someone who has suffered from an eating disorder, I know just how sensitive weight comments can be, so I can't really blame her. If you're already up to speed with the situation, you probably know that it gets more complicated, since she actually names the specific disorder in another tweet. I'm anorexic and in recovery. I'm not ashamed to say it out loud anymore. I'm the result of a culture that celebrates thinness and equates that to worth. But I get to write my own narrative now. I'm finally able to care for a body that I've punished my entire life, and I am finally free. Now, this is only the beginning of my confusion. My first assumption was that she used to be anorexic and gained all this weight in recovery, so of course I thought it was a bit rude for people to be outraged by that. Then I watched Obese to Beast's video about it, and that's when I found out that no, she's anorexic now. And that's when I went from being a bit confused to completely lost in the sauce. I'll give it to John. He was very polite, as always. Unlike a lot of other people I watched, he didn't immediately jump to calling her a liar, though he was obviously a bit skeptical. I, as someone who has a bit more insight when it comes to eating disorders, was also a bit skeptical in the beginning. I'll admit, I actually did comment on his video about how I'm sure that she has some type of eating disorder, but specifically anorexia didn't really make sense to me. I was diagnosed around 2010, and the criteria back then were very different, and if I'm being honest, I'm not well versed in them either, since I was, a child. All I knew was that I was dangerously underweight, and that made me anorexic. If I'm correct, they didn't even remove amenorrhea as a criterion until 2013. For those of you that don't know, it means that to be diagnosed with anorexia, someone who's able to menstruate must have missed out on at least 3 periods. And at the time, I was a child, so I hadn't even begun menstruating. However, it did make it so I didn't have my first period until later in life. Well, I didn't think that she was necessarily lying. I thought there must have been some sort of miscommunication, because at the time I didn't think it was a possibility for someone overweight to be officially diagnosed with anorexia. Luckily enough, Off Herbs and Autumn made a video about it, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. Honestly, I love their content talking about their experience with eating disorders, because it's something I can relate to, because I've been there too. I really recommend you go check them out if you don't already know who they are. They talked about how actually, yes, it is possible to be diagnosed with anorexia even when you're not underweight, because they've changed the criterias. I think that's a wonderful thing, because there's a lot of eating disorder behavior that goes unnoticed because they don't feel deserving of help before it's obvious to everyone that they've starved themselves. The best point Off Herbs and Altars had was that anorexia already is a competitive disorder. You compare yourself to everyone, your body check, you take pride in being the skinniest person in the room. The specific weight criteria set by the DSM unfortunately inspired a lot of eating disordered. If we could meet the criteria for anorexia, we would be sick enough. And the deeper you go, the more difficult it is to get out of it. By recognizing patterns in thinking and an individual's relation to food as disordered, we can catch them and help them before they're too far gone. Her specific diagnosis that has been a topic of debate online is specifically atypical anorexia nervosa, which means that you no longer have to be severely underweight to be diagnosed. Still, people find this pill hard to swallow because of a lack of understanding about eating disorders in relation to weight loss. I've heard a lot of people argue that this diagnosis is for people who might be underweight or maybe average weight, but someone who's plus-sized could hardly be associated with starvation. That's where they're wrong, however, because what's most important to take into consideration is the person's previous weight history. She's at a much higher starting weight, And though losing weight when you're that big is associated with getting healthy, I think we all can agree that how you lose weight is way more important. There are, in fact, unhealthy ways to go about it. If you just completely stop eating, it's still gonna have the same consequences on your body as someone who fits into society's understanding of an anorexic. You can still experience amenorrhea, amenorrhea, and could in fact possibly even starve to death before they've reached a point where they're considered underweight. That's just why this mindset that if you're bigger, all weight loss is healthy and should be encouraged can be very damaging, and I'm sure any health nut can agree. I've also seen many YouTubers talk about how their anorectic viewers have contacted them to express just how upset they are about these news. In a way, I get it. You can get very defensive and protective over an identity, if you can call it that is already stigmatized. To me, it kind of reminds me of the trans discourse, with often binary trans people rejecting non-binary and other less conventional identities, while arguing that they make the community look bad. In reality, I think it's important that she's allowed to speak her truth. Eating disorders don't discriminate, and we shouldn't silence her for the sake of preserving our previous assumptions about what it looks like. She's not speaking over anyone. If you met the previous criteria, you can still make a video talking about it. However, people in both videos and comment sections are dead set on proving that she's lying for whatever reason. They look for anything that goes against the criteria of this eating disorder, and let me tell you what. Us anorectics have mastered the art of putting up a front. What you see is a lie. Because if anyone suspects that something might be wrong, they will interfere with us in our goal to eat as little as possible. I watched videos of absolutely ripped gym bros showing pics of her with cake and videos she took of food. Contrary to popular belief, we do eat, sometimes. Often when we're socializing and want to put up a show for everyone to make them think that we eat like this all the time. But afterwards, we will often isolate ourselves and compensate by skipping meals. She might have taken a picture of a cake, but you don't know if she ate it or how much. You might have seen her eat a donut, but you don't know how much she ate the rest of the day or even week. You just don't know. Here's a picture of me around my lowest point, eating candy floss and ice cream, all in the same day, mind you. Still, I would almost faint at any point of the day. What I'm trying to say is that you absolutely should not speculate about anyone's diagnosis, especially over the internet. Once again, I don't know a lot about her, but if she really is that terrible, then criticize her for that. You don't need to try and debunk her diagnosis to make her look bad. And if it so happens that she was lying, then I would rather trust that than dunk on someone who's clearly doing well for herself. It's not gonna affect her. However, it will affect those like her that sees all these people calling her a liar. They're gonna think that they're not worthy of help because it's not bad enough. But that's not true. Anyone that struggles with eating habits are worthy of help. Last but not least, a lot of people are pointing out that her being a fat activist and previously stating that she loves being fat contradicts the criteria of being scared of gaining weight, and that's somehow a gotcha moment. I don't even know what to do with this, no matter how I twist and turn it. I know we're all obsessed with authenticity, but we all have insecurities. I don't know if she actually meant it when she said she loved being fat, but does it really come as a surprise that the fear of gaining weight is something that could have come with her time in the spotlight and constantly being shamed for her fat? It is possible to have very complex feelings about an aspect of you that you're taught you're supposed to hate. And even if she lied, I don't know, what so? Influencers lie all the time. It's not worth trying to debunk her anorexia diagnosis with it. That being said, comment, like, subscribe if you want to. Follow me on Twitter @Muggen, link in description. Take care, peace out.